I'm so sorry. My last video was like a month ago or something. I was in Spain, having the best time of my life. I traveled like like every city almost. Was out for like a month and a half, bro. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But I'm back and I'm here to react to the most devastating tragedies in history explained. Let's get it.
She was called the Ship of Dreams, a testament to human ingenuity and luxury. On her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York in April 1912, the RMS Titanic carried over 2,200 souls. The vessel was a marvel, declared unsinkable by its builders. This confidence was so complete that the number of lifeboats on board was legally sufficient, but far from enough for everyone. 4 days into the journey, in the freezing calm of the North Atlantic,
Not
a
even
lookout
one whole
spotted an
trip.
iceberg directly ahead. Despite evasive maneuvers, the starboard side of the hull was breached below the waterline. Distress signals were sent out, but the nearest ship was hours away. In less than 3 hours, the grand vessel broke apart and sank beneath the
Hell
waves.
no.
The chaos of the evacuation saw lifeboats launched partially.
Bro, like just imagine, bro, being there, bro, being at this tippy top right here, bro, and then you gotta just jump off. You have to. You have to. All right, you can just wait, but I mean, yeah, you can just wait if you can hold on to your dear life, but you're gonna freeze, bro. You're gonna
Empty while the
freeze to death,
majority of
bro.
passengers were left behind. Over 1,500 people perished in the icy water. The rescue ship Carpathia arrived to a scene of scattered debris and a few hundred survivors. Investigations that followed exposed fatal flaws in safety regulations and shipbuilding practices.
I'm so
The
sorry.
disaster prompted immediate and sweeping changes to maritime law, including the creation of the International Ice Patrol. The ship that was a symbol of progress became a monument to overconfidence. It proves that the greatest dangers are often the ones we refuse to believe are possible. In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the Roman city of Pompeii thrived. It was a
I wanted to
bustling
go to
resort
that
for Rome's
city.
elite, filled with vibrant markets, ornate villas, and thousands of residents. The people of Pompeii were accustomed to minor earth tremors. They were a part of life. They were unaware that these tremors were the stirring of a dormant giant. In 79 AD, the mountain exploded with unimaginable force. A colossal column of
In what
ash,
year? My
pumice,
bad.
and gas
What year?
shot loaded with unimaginable
Wait, I'm
force.
sorry.
These tremors were the stirring of a dormant
What year?
giant. In 79 AD, the mountain
Damn.
exploded with unimaginable force. A colossal column of ash, pumice, and gas shot miles into the stratosphere, blotting out the sun. For hours, the city was bombarded with falling stones and suffocating ash. Then came the pyroclastic surges, superheated waves of gas and volcanic matter. Moving at incredible speeds, they instantly incinerated everything and everyone in their path. The city and its people were buried under dozens of feet of volcanic material. Their bodies decayed, leaving voids in the hardened ash that archaeologists later filled with plaster. For nearly 1,700 years, Pompeii remained lost and perfectly preserved. Its
Wow.
rediscovery in the 18th century provided an unparalleled snapshot of Roman life, frozen at a single moment.
Wow.
In the mid-19th
Oh, what the
century,
fuck is
the
that?
potato was not just a staple in Ireland, it was the foundation of survival. For millions of rural poor, it represented the line between sustenance and starvation. In 1845, a microscopic fungus-like organism called Phytophthora
Whoa, what
infestans
was that?
arrived from North
Ew.
America. It was an
I just
airborne
think shit
pathogen
just
that
come out of
thrived
my
in the damp
closet and
Irish
just
climate, turning healthy
try to do
potato crops
things.
into a black, inedible sludge. The blight swept across the country with terrifying speed, destroying up to half the nation's crop in its first year. The following seasons were even worse, leading to a total failure of the food supply for a third of the population. Despite the island producing other foods like grain and livestock, much of it was exported to Great Britain under guard. Landlords evicted countless families who could no longer pay rent. Soup kitchens and public works projects were wholly inadequate to address the scale of the suffering. Disease, including typhus and cholera, followed hunger, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives. A massive wave of emigration began, with millions fleeing on crowded, disease-ridden vessels. Those who survived the journey arrived in new lands with nothing. By 1852, Ireland's population had fallen by nearly 25% from death and migration. The event became a defining trauma in the nation's memory, permanently altering its demographic and political landscape.
Dude.
The day after Christmas in 2004 began like any other across the coastlines of the Indian Ocean. But deep beneath the
made a movie
waves
about
off
this,
the
right?
coast of Sumatra, a massive shift was about to occur. A 9.1 magnitude undersea earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded, ruptured the seabed. This megathrust earthquake displaced a colossal volume of water, generating a series of powerful waves. On shores hundreds of miles away, the first sign was an unnatural and rapid withdrawal of the sea. The ocean pulled back, exposing the seafloor in a deceptive calm before the disaster. Then, the waves arrived, not as curling crests, but as fast-rising walls of water. They slammed into the coastlines of 14 countries, from Indonesia to Sri Lanka,
14
India, and even the
countries.
east coast of Africa. The energy unleashed was immense, sweeping away entire
I would not
communities
let
in
that
minutes.
happen.
Infrastructure was obliterated. Buildings, roads, and communication lines simply
Like, you know, when you're a kid at the beach, you just like punch the waves. That's easy, bro.
vanished. The human toll was staggering, with an estimated 230,000 people losing their lives. A global relief effort of unprecedented scale was launched in the aftermath. The event exposed the critical lack of a tsunami warning system in the Indian Ocean, a deficit that was quickly rectified. The disaster is now a benchmark for coastal preparedness and international cooperation. It demonstrates that nature's power is absolute, but human vulnerability is often a matter of preparation. In the early 1800s, the Cherokee, Choctaw,
What is
Chickasaw,
that?
Creek, and Seminole nations were established societies in the southeastern United States. They had adopted many Euro-American customs, including written constitutions and farming techniques.
Trail
This
of
progress did
Tears.
not protect them from the relentless demand for land from white settlers. In 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act into law, authorizing the federal government to force indigenous peoples from their ancestral
Bro, there's
homes.
all this nerdy
Despite
talk
legal
where I do not
challenges, including a
understand.
Supreme Court victory for the Cherokee,
Dogs
the
exist-
policy was
exist
brutally
like that?
enforced. Between 1831 and 1838, tens of thousands of men, women, and children were rounded up by the U.S. military. They were compelled to
Dang,
march
just
more
like
than
ICE.
1,000 miles west to designated Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. The journey was poorly organized, with inadequate
that
food,
word?
water, and shelter. People walked through brutal conditions, freezing winters and scorching summers, with little more than the clothes they wore. Thousands died from disease, starvation, and exhaustion along the way. The routes they were forced to travel became known as the Trail of Tears. The survivors had to rebuild their nations from scratch in a new, unfamiliar land. The removal fractured their societies and resulted in the loss of immeasurable cultural knowledge and life. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, one of the largest forced
Hey.
migrations in history unfolded across the Atlantic Ocean. It was a system built to serve the economic demands of European
my
colonies
dog
in the
at?
Americas. European traders established posts along the African coast, exchanging goods like guns and textiles for human beings.
Of course.
Millions of Africans were captured in conflicts and raids, often facilitated by rival African states, and marched to these coastal forts. There they were packed into the dark, suffocating holds of slave ships for the brutal journey known as the Middle Passage. Chained together with barely any room to move, they endured horrific sanitary conditions, malnutrition, and violence. The voyage could last for months, and the mortality rate was extremely high. Those who survived were sold at auction in ports across the Americas.
Whoa! Yo, what is this, bro? Oh, slave sale. 50 or 40, 30 or 40 slaves, the property of. What? Damn, bro, they're begging. They're begging, bro. You digging in me. You digging in me.
They were treated as property, their families torn apart, and they were forced into a life of hard labor on plantations producing sugar, cotton, and tobacco. An estimated 12.5 million Africans were forced onto these ships. Nearly 2 million are thought to have died during the journey alone. The system endured for 4 centuries, shaping the economies and societies of multiple continents. Its abolition was a long and arduous struggle, but its social and economic effects persist to this day. The trade is not a closed chapter of history. It has become the foundation of modern conversations about race and inequality. It reveals how economic greed can be used to justify a system of staggering inhumanity. The morning of September 11th, 2001, began as a bright, clear, late summer day on the east coast of the United States. Millions of people were starting their workday, unaware that the world was about to change. In a coordinated act, 19 terrorists hijacked 4 commercial airliners.
19?
Their targets were iconic symbols of American economic and military power. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower, confirming to a watching world that this was a deliberate attack. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. The fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. Evidence suggests that passengers and crew, after learning of the other attacks, fought back against the hijackers, preventing it from reaching its target in Washington, D.C. The structural damage and intense fires caused both World Trade Center towers to collapse, engulfing lower Manhattan in a massive cloud of dust and debris. In total, 2,977 people from over 90 countries lost their lives in the attacks. The immediate aftermath was a scene of shock, rescue, and profound grief. The events led to a global war on terror, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, and a complete overhaul of aviation security worldwide. The site of destruction has been transformed into a place of remembrance. It proves that a single moment can reshape the geopolitical landscape and redefine a generation's sense of security. In the heart of Bhopal, India, a pesticide plant owned by Union Carbide was a source of local employment. It produced chemicals to help farmers, but it also stored large quantities of highly toxic substances. Among these was methyl isocyanate, or MIC, an extremely dangerous chemical. Over time, critical safety systems at the plant were reportedly neglected or shut down to cut costs. On the night of December 2, 1984, a large amount of water entered a tank containing 42 tons of MIC. This triggered a runaway chemical reaction, causing a massive increase in pressure and temperature inside the tank. The emergency vent released a dense toxic cloud directly into the atmosphere. Heavier than air, the gas blanketed the sleeping city, affecting the hundreds of thousands living in nearby shanty towns. People awoke to a burning sensation in their eyes and lungs, causing panic and a desperate flight for safety. The immediate death toll was in the thousands, as the gas caused direct damage to the lungs and other organs.
They predicted Black Lives Matter.
In the days and weeks that followed, many more succumbed to the effects of their exposure. The disaster became the subject of a protracted legal battle over compensation and responsibility. The long-term consequences have been severe, with survivors facing chronic health issues and subsequent generations experiencing a high rate of birth defects.
My bad.
The plant is now a derelict monument to industrial negligence. By August 1945, World War II had raged for 6 years, but the conflict in the Pacific was not yet over. The
Enola gay. Who's gay? Enola? Who's Enola? Are you Enola?
States, having completed the top-secret Manhattan Project, now possessed a weapon of
I think I heard an interview about the dude who dropped the nuke. He said he would do it again.
Unprecedented power.
Under the same circumstances.
President Harry S. Truman authorized the use of the atomic bomb, believing it would force Japan's surrender and avoid a costly invasion. The city of Hiroshima, a major industrial and military hub, was chosen as the first target. On August 6th, the Enola Gay flew over the city and released its payload, a uranium bomb nicknamed Little Boy. It detonated 1,900 feet above the ground, creating a blinding flash and a powerful fireball. The blast and the resulting firestorm destroyed nearly everything within a 1-mile radius. Tens of thousands of people were killed instantly. 3 days later, with Japan still not having surrendered, a second bomb, Fat Man, was dropped on the city of Nagasaki with similar results. In the following months, many more died from severe burns, radiation sickness, and other injuries. The total number of casualties from both cities is estimated to be between 129,000 and 226,000. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender, effectively ending the war. The bombings ushered in the nuclear age, fundamentally changing the nature of warfare and international relations. The cities are no longer just places on a map. They are global symbols of both mass destruction and the call for peace. It demonstrates humanity's capacity to create technology that can bring about its own annihilation. In the early 20th century, the Armenian people were a significant Christian minority within the predominantly Muslim Ottoman Empire. For centuries, they had lived across the Anatolian Peninsula, maintaining a distinct culture and identity. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, a nationalist movement led by the Young Turks rose to power. Amid the turmoil of World War I, this regime began to view the Armenian population as a threat to their plans for a homogeneous Turkish state. The persecution began systematically on April 24, 1915, with the arrest and execution of several hundred Armenian intellectuals and community leaders in the capital. Soon after, orders were issued for the widespread deportation of Armenian civilians from their homes. This was not a simple relocation, it was a death march. Hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children were forced to walk for months over hundreds of miles into the Syrian desert. They were deprived of food and water and subjected to robbery and violence by guards and bandits.
Holy
Many perished from
guacamole.
starvation, dehydration, and exhaustion. Others were killed in massacres carried out by special military units. By the end of the genocide in 1923,
What kind
an
of
estimated
passport is that?
1.5
Syrian Arab Republic, Republique Arabe Syrienne.
million Armenians had died. Survivors were scattered across the globe, creating a large Armenian diaspora that continues to fight for recognition of the events. The event has become a foundational element of modern Armenian identity. In the late 1920s, Ukraine was the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, known for its fertile black soil and productive farms. Its millions of independent farmers were a cornerstone of the region's identity and economy. Joseph Stalin's regime sought to eliminate private land.
Let's try to read this. Kolksoslarda mihnat 6N 6 BNB Mysterio Akalem Mistakamla.
Ownership and consolidate all
Mistakamla.
agriculture into state-controlled collective farms. This
Mistakamla.
policy was met with fierce resistance from the Ukrainian peasantry, who were then labeled as kulaks and enemies of the state.
Kulaks.
1932, the Soviet government imposed impossibly high grain quotas on Ukraine. When farmers failed to meet these targets, brigades of activists were sent to confiscate not just all the grain, but all available food from their homes. A man-made famine was deliberately engineered, with all food sources removed and the borders sealed to prevent anyone from
what is Spider-Man doing here, dude? What? Spider-Man
leaving.
existed?
Starvation became a weapon.
Wow.
The countryside fell silent as millions began to succumb to hunger. The state denied the existence of the famine, exporting millions of tons of
weird,
grain to the
bro.
west, while its own people
Weird, bro.
starved.
Look at the one on the
The
right.
peak of the deaths occurred in the spring of
look at the one on the
1933, with estimates of 25,000 people dying each
Ah.
day. In total, it is estimated that between
why
3.5
am I getting
and
so
7 million
scared?
Ukrainians perished. The Holodomor, which means to kill by starvation,
Dude, I'm
crushed the
actually
peasant resistance and devastated the Ukrainian nation for generations. The famine is now recognized by many countries as a genocide against the Ukrainian people. In the early 1990s, Rwanda was a nation simmering with ethnic tension. The division between the majority Hutu and the minority Tutsi populations had been hardened by decades of colonial rule and post-colonial politics. An extremist Hutu power ideology gained traction, promoted by political hardliners and media outlets. Radio stations in particular began broadcasting hateful propaganda, dehumanizing the Tutsi people and calling for their elimination. On the evening of April 6, 1994, a plane carrying Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana, a Hutu, was shot down. This assassination was the trigger. Extremists immediately blamed Tutsi rebels and launched their meticulously planned campaign of extermination. Roadblocks were set up across the country, and identity cards were checked to
Life is Roblox.
separate Hutu from Tutsi. The perpetrators were not just soldiers,
Roblox.
but ordinary citizens.
Machete?
Neighbors turned against neighbors, incited by the government and militia groups like the Interahamwe. For 100 days, a wave of intimate and brutal violence swept across the country. People were killed in their homes, in schools, and even in churches where they had sought refuge. The international community largely failed to intervene, withdrawing peacekeepers instead of reinforcing them. The genocide was only stopped when the Tutsi-led Rwandan Patriotic Front captured the capital, Kigali. In roughly 100 days, an estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus had been murdered. The nation faced the immense challenge of seeking justice and reconciliation. The event became the defining example of the world's failure to act in the face of genocide. When the line between order and chaos is terrifyingly thin, and that hatred, when weaponized by the state, can turn a society against itself. In the 1930s, Jewish people
Here
were
we
an
go.
integrated part of German society and across Europe. They were doctors, artists, shopkeepers, and neighbors, woven into the fabric of their respective nations. The rise of the Nazi Party in Germany brought with it a virulent, state-sponsored anti-Semitism. This ideology culminated in the Final Solution, a secret plan for the systematic extermination of all European Jews. Beginning with
Damn.
discriminatory laws and forced segregation into ghettos, the persecution escalated into an industrial-scale operation. Jewish people, along with other targeted groups like the Roma, Poles, political dissidents, and homosexuals, were rounded up across Nazi-occupied Europe. They were transported in cattle cars to a network of
I
concentration
actually went there. 2016, I went there.
and extermination camps. Upon
It was
arrival,
fire.
many
It
were
was
sent
fire.
directly to gas chambers. Others were subjected to forced labor, starvation, medical experiments, and unimaginable cruelty until they succumbed. The system was designed for maximum efficiency in mass murder, from the detailed record keeping to the crematoria used to dispose of the bodies. By the time the camps were liberated by Allied forces in 1945, the full horror was revealed to the world. 6 million Jewish men, women, and children had been murdered. The
Hey, the boy in the striped
aftermath led to the Nuremberg
pajamas.
trials, establishing the legal precedent for crimes against humanity, and fueled the creation of the State of Israel. The Holocaust is not simply an event, it is the benchmark of absolute evil. In the mid-14th century, Europe was a world of growing
The
cities and
Black Death. Yo,
expanding
yo, 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 check me out, check me out, check me out. These, these masks or whatever, doctors wore them. Um, yeah. So in here in this beak, they have like herbs and like spices and like stuff, so they wouldn't get sick.
trade networks. Its population was
Facts.
larger than ever before,
So
but it was
so if you saw some people like this just walking around, they were on their way to see a sick person.
also vulnerable
They
to
were
forces it could
doctors.
not see or understand. The bacterium Yersinia
The
pestis, the
plague.
cause of bubonic plague, originated in
Yeah.
Central Asia. It traveled along the Silk Road, carried by fleas on black rats that were common passengers on merchant ships. In 1347, the plague arrived in Sicily, and from there, it
Because they thought that this mask would like protect them, but it really didn't do much.
spread with terrifying speed. People would fall ill with fevers and painful swellings, called buboes, in their lymph nodes, with death often following within days. The sheer number of the dead overwhelmed society's ability to cope. Lacking a scientific understanding of disease, people turned to religious extremism, scapegoating, or hedonism. Social structures collapsed. Parents abandoned children, and priests refused to give last rites. Within 5 years, the Black Death had swept through nearly all of Europe. It is estimated to have killed between 30 and 60% of the continent's population, up to 200
Whoa.
million people. The plague returned in waves for centuries, though never as devastating as the first outbreak. The massive population loss led to profound long-term changes, including labor shortages that empowered the surviving peasantry and helped erode the feudal system. The event is now understood not as divine punishment, but as a biological catastrophe. It shows how a microscopic organism can bring a civilization to its knees, reordering the course of history itself. In the heart of the ancient world, in the city of Alexandria in Egypt, stood a beacon of human intellect.
Oh
The
yeah,
Great
yeah,
Library
yeah, yeah. Like, because there was like a ton of history here, bro. Like, I heard like 60% of history isn't like well known, isn't discovered, because of this burning library right here.
was more than a collection of scrolls. It was the world's first universal research institute.
See,
For
see.
centuries, it was the center of Western scholarship, housing perhaps 500,000 texts from across the known world. Here, brilliant minds mapped the stars, calculated the circumference of the Earth, and laid the foundations of geometry, medicine, and literature. The library's end was not a single event, but a slow, painful decline spanning centuries. One of the most famous incidents occurred in 48 BC, when Julius Caesar became embroiled in a civil war in Alexandria. During the fighting, he set fire to enemy ships in the harbor. According to some ancient accounts, the flames spread to parts of the city and destroyed a significant warehouse of scrolls adjacent to the library. This was a severe blow, but it was not the final one. The library suffered from budget cuts under Roman rule and further destruction during subsequent conflicts and religious purges.
No.
What one fire started, centuries of neglect, conflict, and dogmatism completed. By the time the main library ceased to exist, its unique collection had been scattered or lost. We can only speculate about the scientific discoveries and literary masterpieces that vanished forever, potentially setting back progress by centuries. The library is no longer a physical place. It is a symbol for the fragility of knowledge. While it does not compare to the loss of human life, the destruction of knowledge creates a different kind of devastation, a void that can never truly be filled. These
Damn, most corrupt leaders. Why isn't Maduro here? The most powerful families in history explained. Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Oh no, never mind. Who's this? Who's this? Never mind. Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Everything explained, Chris. Okay. Thanks for watching. Take care, yeah.